Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Disorganized Religion Podcast, the DRP.
Derp.
I'm still struggling with the derp.
Gets him every time.
Okay, yeah. It's a privilege to once again share with you a little bit of time here talking about all things church, religion, and culture in general. So, again, I'm joined, as always, by my trusty companions.
Eric Johnson here at Heritage Adult Discipleship and Online Content.
And DaShawn Jones on the ministerial staff at Mount Olive AME.
Yeah, we should actually switch it up some and give other random facts about us each time.
That would be good.
I am Aries, and I enjoy walks on the beach, and I don't know, that wouldn't be funny, I guess.
Well, I'm a Libra and I like Disney.
Gotcha. Well, I gotta.
By the way, DaShawn just preached here at Heritage last Sunday. I thought it was amazing.
Crushed it.
Yep. Had great reviews.
I always tell my guest preachers to do as well as they can without preaching better than me. And he was not at all willing to comply with that. He was really, really good. And so now I have to improve. So thanks for nothing there, buddy. No, really, seriously, DaShawn did great work leading us in worship this past Sunday. Even with the broken AC at the 9 o'clock service, which he soldiered through there. So well done. But he actually heads back to the nation's capital for college tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that right? Really?
So,
yeah. Wow.
So I'm going to have some DaShawn withdrawal, I guess. Figure out some kind of technical way to zoom him in to our shtick here somehow.
Yeah, we can make that.
Some kind of technological magic that we can make that happen. But and he's going to D.C., going to college, not having anything to do with the government. But still, do your best to go up there and make some things happen and make it better.
Yeah.
We're counting on you.
Do my best.
Do it. Well, so I feel like it would be a missed opportunity to begin this week's podcast without getting into at least a quick wrap-up of the Olympics.
Sports.
It's kind of the biggest... DaShawn, a huge fan of the Olympics. But no, I mean, it's kind of the thing that consumes the world for a couple of weeks, right? Usually it's a time when the whole world comes together around sports. I think we were still divided on a lot of things while we were trying to watch the sports. But
And without anybody in the stands, it was really
weird to have nobody in the stands. Yeah. I wonder, I mean, Tokyo did a pretty good job of having the Olympics, but
yeah.
I mean, they must have lost money on it.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah.
I hope there's some mechanism.
Well, they say every Olympics loses money, but they must have been particularly in the hole.
But I think the
when you
Olympics
can't sell tickets,
But the Olympics does pay them to build some of the stuff, right?
I have no idea how it works. But yeah.
Because then they get to keep the stuff, right. The Atlanta Stadium that they built for the Olympics. They then get to keep that,
right.
Use it for the Braves.
Yeah.
I mean, having no people travel there had to be a real killer to what
Hotels,
they were hoping.
meals, tickets for venues,
Yeah. So thanks anyway to the folks in Tokyo for doing the Olympics anyway, even though it wasn't not nearly what they'd hoped. Still had some cool memories. I gotta say, the highlight for me was seeing a Horan in the Olympics score some goals in women's soccer.
Women's soccer, yeah. No relation.
I mean, there must be some relation somewhere. We all go back to was it County Galway in Ireland back in the home country. We all must come from one Horan family somewhere. Although I think we were O'Hanrahans or something like that, and it kind of got trimmed down.
Yeah, when they come to America.
It was nice to hear the announcers say it right, because of that guy from One Direction. Everyone says Horan, which is not how you say it. At least not how you're supposed to say it.
So as a soccer, it's like I was watching the gold medal game between, it was Canada and Sweden, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it went to penalty kicks. What's your stand on penalty kicks deciding outcomes and gold medals? To me, as a non-real soccer fan, it seemed like not a good way to end a game for a gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, it basically comes down to, do you want a team to win just because of the sheer exhaustion of everyone, and finally people are, just cannot even run anymore, and then someone finally scores?
Right.
Or do you want some competitive thing to finish it off? I think that, soccer has struggled enough to have people who are willing to watch it, especially in the U.S. when there's so little scoring.
It's a long game.
It's a long game.
Not a whole lot of scoring.
There aren't a lot of stats accumulated,
Yeah.
like assists and goals and saves. Other than that, it's hard to accumulate stats
Yeah.
like we do.
Minutes on the field, maybe.
Yeah. So it's like someone who watches sports in America, like watching baseball. There's stats for everything.
Yeah.
You know how often this guy is able to get out left-handed batters at night.
Yeah, gives the commentator something to talk about
Right.
between the action.
Right. Yeah. So I think the shootout adds this super duper layer of excitement to the end of the game that wouldn't normally be there if you're just waiting for a ball to finally get in on 8th overtime.
Right.
So I don't. Yeah, I mean you want probably a team to earn it from just
By scoring
playing
a real
playing
goal,
soccer.
yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, the U.S. lost a game on one penalty kick that was a terrible call.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yep.
I mean, this one girl is kicking the ball out of bounds to clear it away from our goal. Their player gets in the way of the kick, gets kicked in the penalty box, and got a penalty shot and scored, and we lost 1-0. Right.
Right. Yep.
So I mean, penalty kicks in general are kind of a rough
Sore
piece of the
spot
whole
for-
game. But in the absence of knowing what else to do, I think that's the least bad option. But it is pretty exciting. And, when a goalkeeper makes a save, I'm especially excited, of course, for them. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
But,
All right,
yeah.
so soccer for you.
Soccer for me, yeah. Soccer.
An
good stuff.
equally exciting sport in most of the minds of American viewers. My favorite sport is swimming, but that's because I'm intimately involved in it. Having been a swimmer, I started swimming when I was 10 years old. Swam all the way through high school and college, and now my son is a swimmer and Olympic hopeful. So
Huge.
we might be going to Paris in 3 years. No pressure. And I've gotten into swim coaching. So for me, it's watching the Olympic swimmers was really cool. We were in Houston for most of it because my son was at a AAU swim meet.
Oh, nice.
And all the kids wanted to rush back, because they would swim in the evening. They wanted to rush back in time to see, the swimming events, because they were one things that were live too. They were 8:30 every night. So yeah, watching guys like Caleb Dressel and
So it's a full
Bobby Fink and some of those guys.
12 hours. It's a full 12 hours off, right?
Yeah. So
To watch at 8:30 at night means it's happening at 8:30 in the morning over
correct.
there.
Yeah. So they were swimming their finals, the final races for medals and stuff in the mornings. And there was some local talent there. Bobby Fink from Spa and Wyatt from Sarasota. So we were rooting for, some of those local swimmers. And my son just got to meet Bobby Fink yesterday, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
So I was excited about the swimming stuff.
Yeah, swimming is super exciting. You got a lot of close finishes, and the relays are cool. I like watching the relays.
Yeah.
That's good TV also. DaShawn, what is the least bad sport for you to watch in the Olympics?
I'd say the track events.
Yeah,
I like
there were
watching
some good
people
ones
run.
too this
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
I've always wondered how someone gets into what is the one where you throw the heavy ball from your
Shot
neck,
put.
the shot put?
Yeah.
I've always wondered what gets someone into that one.
I did shot put in
Did
high
you really?
school. Yeah, it was really fun. So I like that event the most. Of
So
all the track
so when
events.
you're young, what makes you go, I'm gonna try throwing this huge heavy ball?
one of the field coaches just looks at you, probably examines your body type and hey, you could throw the ball. And so that's usually what happens.
The coach says, "You're not a runner. So we're gonna move you to the field events instead of the
Basically.
track events. And then we're gonna
You're
find
gonna do
one.
field.
You look really strong. We're gonna
Yeah.
try shot put and javelin. Did they do javelin in high school? I don't know.
Not at mine, but like they do in high school, like for public schools.
That'd be dangerous to have the young
That's
kids.
why I was
do javelin.
asking, handing teenagers long spears.
I
But
saw this one terrible video one time of someone doing the javelin and like threw it and it like stuck into a referee's shoulder.
Oh,
It's like,
the one that's really there's like isn't there one that's like a chain? Like there's like a ball on a chain and they
yeah.
oh yeah, what is that called?
I have no idea.
Yeah, like they swing it around.
Yeah.
Is it the hammer throw?
Hammer throw, that's what it is. Yep. So
I
yeah,
thought-
watching the women run. I mean, the women's sprinters, they were amazing. All those women from Jamaica and the U.S. and
Yeah.
that guy from Norway on the 400 meter hurdles. I mean, he just in that last like 50 meters looked like he was cranking it. So yeah, it's just some amazing stuff. And you know what's really cool about the Olympics? Is the human interest stories that they always do, like in between the events. You know, and you hear about the adversity and the training, and particularly this Olympics because they all had to like postpone their Olympics for a whole year, so they had to like restart their training or re-gear their training, or they couldn't train. And
Speaking of stories in the Olympics, I would love to know how many of the Olympic events were started as dares by drunk people. like the shot put. Like, didn't some guys walk out of a bar and go, "I can throw this further than you can," or the hammer? Probably there's a guy up there on a roof trying to needing a hammer, and I can't get it up there. Maybe you can get it up there. Yeah, I don't know. Some of these events are
and
really
they seem like
strange.
they might have been weapons of war. Like,
Or-
was the shot put like
The
really
shot put
like a cannonball?
Yeah, cannonball.
Right? And a couple of Navy sailors all got. I bet you
The
I can
cannon's
throw
not working.
this
So just throw that baby.
javelin.
That's true. Maybe it was all
Hammer
yeah,
throw.
war
Or
games.
probably yeah.
It's probably true. But yeah, so I definitely agree. The Olympics athletes that got there this time went through a whole lot to get there.
Yeah. So it made me wonder, and perhaps we can talk about this a little bit. So most of those stories, and when you talk to the athletes, they would say how much that adversity may have helped them in this case, how much it may have contributed to their success, right? And going through all the training and the delays, and so, they would ask them, well, did this year of COVID, did it help your training or hurt your training? And a lot of them, said it helped, because they had an extra year to work on it, but it also made it harder because it was an extra year of, going through that. So I just wondered, and to bring this around to a faith angle, does that adversity make us stronger? Does God allow adversity in our lives to help us to grow, to help us to become better
Or cause
athletes? Or does it help us to become better disciples by putting us through adversity? Are we better equipped when we come through that to do whatever God has called us to do?
Let me ask you a question. So as a coach, do you do things to make the events harder in practice so that it's not that hard when they're actually competing?
Absolutely. So there are definitely training techniques. There's resistance training. There's weight training. There's swimming. In swimming particularly, we swim with resistance cords and parachutes and drag suits and stuff that make the act of swimming harder, so that when you do it in a competition, you're faster and stronger. Yeah.
And so the players or the swimmers hate you during that.
Yes. and they may only race 50 meters, right, which only takes 30 seconds, but at training we'll train for 2 hours, and they'll swim a whole lot farther than 50 meters. They'll swim 5,000 meters in 2 hours, so that when they go, they only have to swim 50, and go fast. So
What was the new length this year in the Olympics? Like 1,500?
so they added the 1,500 meters for women.
It was
and they,
forever.
Yeah, and they added the 800 meters for men. So in previous Olympics, it was 800 for females and 1,500 for males. Because
Wow.
I guess back then we thought females couldn't swim 1,500 meters, which is
Apparently they can.
absurd. Yeah, Katie Ledecky clearly
Yeah,
can.
it could have.
So
But it's a good question though. And so you look at a coach, right, who intentionally makes it harder for the players because that'll make them better when they compete.
right.
Is it unreasonable to say that God might make something harder for us in order to refine us for when we need, to actually spring into action in some way? I don't know. I don't know what your take would be on that one.
What do you think?
I don't think it'd be unreasonable to say that. There are great verses in the Bible that talk about how the testing of our faith, causes us to be stronger in our belief in God and our trust. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that maybe God would allow things like that to happen. I guess that's where it gets funny.
Is it cause or allow?
Cause or allow.
Right.
Yeah. Because I don't think we like to think about God as, this person, is this being that, causes us to suffer. But I definitely know, I definitely believe that God allows us to suffer in so many ways because we do suffer. And so I guess I think that's the line you have to draw. When is it God causing pain or when is it God allowing suffering? And I think, the story of Job is one of those where you have to look at it and say, did God allow Job to be tested or did God cause Job to be tested? And that conversation between God and Satan at the beginning is just you can't really draw a definitive line there. So
I think the scriptures, especially the ones where you have Satan involved, right? Those are really fascinating to me. When, so in Job's case, and I mean in that story, it's not entirely clear that it's Satan. It says it's the adversary,
right.
which actually was a job that people had in royal courts and kings in the times of kings, where it would be the devil's advocate person who would in order to help them make a better decision would bring
Put
up
up
all the
the
possible
objections,
objections, right? So that's who you have there. We've sort of made it Satan over the years.
Yeah.
But either way, there are limits that God puts around what can happen to the person, right? Same thing with in the New Testament, Jesus says, Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you, right? So it's this odd dynamic where there's a request made that God has to approve.
Yeah.
Now that's obviously reading into it. The writers aren't trying to explain to us the dynamic between God and Satan.
Right.
So that's us just purely, theorizing on that. But I think the real important question to wrestle with is the causing versus allowing.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people have you heard say, "Well, I went through this, but it was so that this," right? And I mean, let's be honest. The Bible says flat out that there are times when, this bad thing happened. So
Right.
and Jesus even says about God testing, I mean, so we like you said, we don't want to believe that God would cause these things. The Bible kind of says that He does, right? So that's the challenge: is what do we do with that? And there are people who would say the reason that they're not followers of Jesus Christ, or don't want nothing to do with the church or God or anything, is the whole idea that God might cause cancer in order to cause some other refining thing to happen. And so it's one of those areas that there's not a clean answer to it. There are some voices out there who would say, well, if it happened, it was God's plan.
Yeah.
And so the assumption is that everything happens, good, bad, or indifferent, all of it God caused, every single ounce of it, and that all of it happens within God's. Now, that obviously isn't the Methodist way. We see it differently than that. We see it as God inviting people to continue to walk through those fires and those refining experiences towards Him. And He's always inviting, giving us free will, the choice to walk towards Him or away. And those things, I mean, like the athletes all said, those things are refining.
I think it requires you to kind of just wrestle with the different wills of God. God's decorative will, God's permissive will, I think once I guess once you reconcile the will of God, I think so much of the conversation shifts after you've gone through something, and I think that's where we learn the most, and I think that's where we grow the most, is on the other side of suffering. Well, how did this help me, or how did this strengthen me, or what did I learn about God in this trial, or what did I learn about myself in this trial? So I think on the other side of it, I think we see that there's a lesson, there was a point, and there was even a benefit kind of in the struggle. And so I guess I think we can sometimes get too hung up on, why is it happening or what caused it, because just like the athletes, like they've had their different struggles and things that have gone on in their lives, but then they look at it after they've competed and they're like, well, I was a better person because of it, I was a better athlete because of it, and I'm here in this position as an Olympic athlete today because of it.
And it's so easy also to see those same things as excuses.
That's true.
Like I didn't go to the Olympics because of this pandemic, right? And who's going to argue with you? Like, yeah, that was terrible.
Right.
And so I think there's something to be said for, the whole idea of seeing those events not as things that God put there on purpose, but since God is constantly calling us to walk towards Him in good times and bad, we have the choice. Do we walk through it and take the refining? And even I've heard that the ultimate measure of maturity in your faith is to walk through the fire and give thanks for it while you are, because this is refining you, right? I'm not sure I'm there. That's a level that I've not quite reached, but
I haven't run into any swimmers who were to that point yet.
Thank you for making me wear this parachute while I swim. Right. But yeah, do I walk through it knowing it's going to hurt, knowing that it's going to refine me, or do I see this? Okay, I'm not doing that. And frankly, I think people will understand if I tell them I'm not doing it because that's going to be too hard for me. Mm-hmm. And that's tough.
But that's what ends up separating and bringing out the gold medalist from the thousands of people who would love to have been there, but at some point along the way, for whatever reason, couldn't get there. So
wasn't it Kobe Bryant who said, "You may be better than me, but you will never outwork me"?
Yeah.
So that's that kind of thing, right? That kind of thinking. Like, doesn't matter. I'm going to walk through every challenge. I'm going to run through every wall that is in front of me. I'm going to do the work.
Yeah. And Michael Phelps, he's quoted as saying something to the effect of, if you want to be the best, you got to be willing to go through what nobody else is willing to go through. So that's, to get to that level of competition, you got to be willing to do what nobody else is willing to do. So, and greats like Kobe and LeBron and Tom Brady and, Simone Biles, I mean, they all do what nobody else is willing to do.
Yeah. And maybe that's the narrowness of the gate that they talk about in Scripture, right? Is who's really willing to walk through it? Yeah. When you see what's really involved in walking through it, some people say thanks, but no thanks.
And I think that equates to our faith too. Like the longer you go down that road towards sanctification, the harder it gets. And there's some people that, take a little break for a while on the road to say, I know I need to prune that for my life, but I'm not really ready to give that up yet. And just like, okay, I'm gonna hold right here on my path toward discipleship for a while until I can get to, giving that up. So.
It's a good topic for another day. Would be to think about, the things you take on, the responsibilities you take on to walk through those fires, to do the things that it takes, versus the freedom you feel by taking them on. Because there is something freeing about that sanctification journey, right? The farther you go, there is so much more to gain than it costs you ultimately. But it's still a price to pay for.
Well, that sounds like a teaser for part 2, maybe, of this podcast.
Could be, yeah. So you don't want to miss that. So make sure you come on back for part 2 or whatever episode we're on.
Part 2 at this point.
Right. But guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us today on the Disorganized Religion Podcast, the DRP or the
Dirt.
Catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks. See ya.